I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here with me today is David Morgan, publisher of the Morgan Report. Thank you for joining me today.
Charlotte, it's always fun to be with you.
Okay, great. So let's get started. We're heading into the end of the year, and I wondered if gold and silver performed as you expected this year. Were there any surprises?
Not really. I put out a free report on the silver price for 2017. It's done almost exactly what I predicted.
Okay.
So it's not been a great year.
No, okay. You spoke with us right after the U.S. election, and I know there was a lot of excitement then, like, oh, maybe Trump will have a big effect. What have we seen? I think you predicted that wouldn't really be the case.
Yeah, I said it was pretty much immaterial. A lot of people, especially some Canadians that are, good friends, thought that it would have a significant impact. And I said it's like changing the captain on the Titanic. The ship is doing what it's going to do regardless of what captain is taking at the controls. So that's been basic, my funny metaphor for what's going on. I don't see any significance to Trump. And I don't see a big change really in policy.
Okay. So not very exciting year. What about moving forward? How is 2017 or end of 2017 and 2018 looking?
Yeah, and that report I referenced, that's free on the morganreport.com. I said I'd be surprised to see 20. I expect around the 20 level. I'd be shocked, or I maybe didn't use the word shocked. I said surprised if we hit 22 this year. I think we're going to do, unfortunately, what we've done the last several years, which means we're going to sell off in the last trading day of the year, which means I expect it to fall off for the next few months. And it's not what I want, but let the market decide for me most of the time. That's what I see.
So interest rate hike, not too much?
Yeah, I think the interest rate hike is baked into the metals prices already. The Fed really can't hike much more. They will, I think, at some point go higher, but we're talking minuscule amounts relative to what normal interest rates are.
So for investors, not really too many catalysts to watch, I guess? Or?
No, but the overall main theme about the debt bomb that I wrote about in the Silver Manifesto just continues to get worse and worse, and no one's paying attention to it. The overused metaphor of the elephant in the room, it continues to grow and everyone's ignoring it, but it can't be ignored forever. I think 2018 is when it's going to be noticed, maybe out of the corner of your eye kind of a thing, and then it's going to become more and more apparent as we march through 2018.
So what will be the consequences of that?
Well, as all over-indebted countries do, they try to, print wealth, and you can't. If you could print wealth, Zimbabwe would be the richest place on the planet. So you will see a point where more and more recognize what the East has already done to the West, which means they're going to remove themselves from the U.S. dollar as much as possible. You've already seen that with the AIIB, the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, and the BRICS countries are moved out of the SWIFT system. They do settlement outside of the U.S. dollar. You're seeing the oil trade go to yuan-based rather than U.S. dollar only, which is a huge play. And then, of course, the gold trade has moved from west to east for the last several years, and everyone kind of notices it, but doesn't say a whole lot about it in the mainstream. So there's a lot of factors that are lining up, building a strong foundational argument that the gold story is far from over.
So as an investor, how do you prepare? What do you do right now?
Well, you take a balanced approach. I've always been an advocate of like 10 to 20% of the most. If you're a metals head like me, then maybe 20% in the sector. You don't want to put all your funds into one asset. What's more important than, the precious metals or base metals? Metals generally, it's oil, it's energy, it's electricity, it's, the energy metals, cobalt, vanadium, lithium, and we cover all those, and rare earth elements. We're the first on that story. So I think you want to diversify, and I'm again talking about natural resources, which is my specialty, but outside of that, you want some cash, you probably want diversification in different jurisdictions, you definitely want some energy. If you have some cash flowing real estate that you bought at the right time, that's good as well. I don't look at myself as an expert on a portfolio manager from an all-in 100%, this is what you're going to do. I look at myself as a specialist in the resource sector that's maybe 20%. The other 80%, you can decide.
Okay. Okay, switching topics a little bit. In the last week or so, we've had these allegations that Barclays is manipulating the copper market. That's a big issue for silver as well. What are your thoughts on manipulation? Is that a big concern for you?
Charlotte, you telling me that Barclays manipulated the copper market? I don't believe it. At this day and age? Yeah, it's always been a concern. I mean, I wrote a whole chapter on silver manipulation in the Silver Manifesto. I'm not for it. I wish there were really true free markets, but I don't think those have existed for quite some time. And yeah, it's a concern, but markets have a way of righting themselves. Remember, there's nothing more powerful than the truth. And the truth is that at some point, all these things, the truth comes out, as the old adage goes. And again, it goes back to what I was saying about 2018 a moment ago. As that elephant in the room is noticed more and more and more, as Bill Holter says, truth bombs will come out, and bam, that hits, and bam, that hits. And all of a sudden, there will be more and more of a division. And I know that's one of your questions, so I'll quiet down and let you ask the next one.
Sure, yeah. So this is the last question. You covered so many things at the Morgan Report. What's been the most compelling opportunity you've seen this year?
Well, this one goes back for at least a year, and it has to do with a big place in my career. If you look at the history of silver over the last, say, 40 years that I've been interested in resources generally, and particularly silver, the predecessor was named Jerome Smith, wrote several books on silver, well published, and he said that, it would be a silver shortage that squeezed the price to like $100 to $200 an ounce by 1995. And I was at a conference like this called Wealth Protection, and the promoter asked me, "You've been hearing this silver shortage thing for years. What's wrong? You guys, and he was giving me the raspberries. I said, well, really, it's very simple. The presupposition was that you could only mine 350 billion ounces a year. And that was true from like 1930 all the way to about 1980 something. And then the technology changed, and once cyanide heap leaching took effect, it boosted the offtake of gold and silver substantially. So and I gave that answer, and he was like, "Oh, you guys know how many people I've asked and no one knew the answer? Wow!" He's all, and I was like, "Thank you." And so I've always been cognizant of a technological change that could change not only the mining industry, but the auto industry or the food industry or whatever. So we now are involved with a company that has replaced cyanide with an inert reagent. And it's part of a speculative situation that I have for our Morgan Report subscribers. And it was actually a spin-off that was tax-free.
Okay.
So it's gone from like roughly a nickel at the financing stage to I think 70 cents now. It's partnered with a multi-conglomerate that's a multi-billion-dollar company. So there's no shortage of money from this point forward. And I own it. I'm excited about it. And will it be as big a change as cyanide heap leaching was in the 80s? I don't know, but it has a great potential. And the thing that's really funny, Charlotte, is that this company over the next, say, 5 years could be one of the biggest gold producers in the world and never dig any dirt at all. Gets it all from electronic waste.
Okay.
And all the Apples and the Android phones, Googles and all, they all want to be environmentally sound. And they want to say, hey, when you turn that thing in, turn it into us and we'll take care of it. Well, with this reagent, it's environmentally sound.